I tend to be a renegade and a radical in certain ways because my experience of myself is that I'm a rainbow child. You know, I have Native background, I have European background. You know, I have many kinds of Indian blood, even many kinds of Native blood. So I've just always felt like a global person. And what I'm most interested in is what works for human beings. All right, so I just want to say hello to you all and thank you so much for joining in. This is a really enjoyable thing for me. I haven't had a chance to teach very much in the last few weeks, and I love teaching, so it's exciting. So let's just quiet ourselves for a moment and really tune in. And I'm going to say, Great Spirit, Great Mother, Creator, we're so thankful for this opportunity to come together. We're thankful, even though there are glitches and changes, that we have this remarkable technology to connect to each other. We pray for a time when we can do this without technology, that we are so heart connected that we can come together without anything except our own hearts and our own brilliance and the richness of who we are as a human family. And so we begin this time in gratefulness and I ask that I be a hollow bone to bring through the highest and finest that will serve these wonderful people who have joined together. And those things are yours, Creator, Great Mother. They're your words, your understandings, your wisdom. And so I ask that those come through today to serve these folks very well. And so today we think about all of those who have not the chance at all to have these kind of experiences, who are perhaps in refugee camps or whatever they might be in. And so we recognize our richness and how special this is that we have a chance to do this. And so our dedication then is not only to ourselves and our own learning and growth, but that we might become the really full human beings that we are, that will really offer our service and gifts to the larger world and to all our relations, that we might bring a really golden time to this sweet earth. And so we say, Aho, Mitakuyasan, for all our relations. All right. So first of all, I want to take you on a journey, because we're talking about sanctuary and about, in a sense, about ceremony. And I think about wanting to ground ourselves in something that is beyond, how would I say it? It's beyond any destruction or beyond any confusion or beyond any surface experience. And so that deep grounding is a grounding in source, a grounding in spirit, a grounding in life, absolute life. And so I want to take you on a journey. So if you just get comfortable, excuse my doors slamming here, somehow the wind is blowing wildly. So you'll just get comfortable and close your eyes. Excuse me. I'm going to take you on a journey back to the beginning. So in the beginning, there was nothing. No thing existed. Nothing material had manifest. But what was there was a great, deep, dark void in which lay the potential for everything that would ever manifest. That deep, dark, rich void is the womb of the Great Mother. The Great Mother, that womb that she is love. So that womb of love was what was present at the very beginning, the deep, dark void that's talked about in all our creation stories and all our spiritualities. And then out of nothing, the Great Mother called the Father Light into her womb of love. And when the Mother and Father, when love and light joined together, a passion exploded and came alive. A passion to create beauty. And so in that moment, coming together, then creation began to unfold, and all the universes poured out from that great womb, that love and the light of awareness and aliveness that awakened it. And so all and everything, universe after universe after universe, star systems of great beauty, all these things came into being in physical reality then. And what's interesting is that you also came into being then. The Great Mother created you and your eternal soul and sent you out into the family of life to have experience after experience after experience. And we find ourselves now in an experience of being in an earth robe, a human body. And that same love and light are what make us, what we're made of. And so the Great Mother Father made us of love and light and sent us in the world to share that love and light and to learn and grow and experience in the richness of the wholeness of creation. And what's wonderful is that when we look at it this way, we realize that we're family with everything. We're connected with everything. And of course, in modern science, they're now reminding us that they know that as well, that we are all connected in a great wholeness. And so here we are in this great wholeness with our family. And so what I'd like you to do is to just relax even a little more and let yourself drift a bit as though you're drifting in a golden bubble that takes you so rapidly, moving out and away from our planet and out past the Milky Way and Andromeda, our neighboring galaxy, and out and out and out, and maybe back in time even, we might think, back and out, until with amazing speed, we find ourselves nestled into that deep, dark, rich, nourishing, nurturing womb of the Great Mother, our own Great Mother, the birther of all life and all things. And we can rest there. We can rest there and let go. We say, Great Mother, take me to that great, deep, dark womb where I can do nothing and be alive, be awake, be inspired, be filled, be nourished, be given inspiration and creativity of ideas. Because the Great Mother not only filled you with love and light, she also gave you another part of her capacity, she and the Great Father, and that is to create out of nothing. And so that inspiration, that rich inspiration that comes right straight from the source the beginning source of all things and all life, that continues, that great womb continues to hold us and all things. And so journeying there to be nourished and rested, where everything is contained. There's nothing missing. Journeying there, we are nourished and renewed and made more whole by our connection with each and everything in the circle of life. And so then we can come back into our daily lives, letting that beautiful bubble lift you out and gently bring you back through the star systems and the universes. When you're out there, you realize that there are these tiny, tiny pinpoint-like spirals that are galaxies. Hundreds of them. Getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you get close and they're enormous. And then you come back into our Milky Way galaxy. The beautiful, beautiful star system, and back out sort of to her tail where our planetary system is. And then you come back into that and our great sun and all the planets, Saturn and big Venus, and pretty soon we're dropping down and seeing the moon and coming back down and right down into this absolutely exquisitely rare and beautiful blue-green planet that is our home. And we come back and drop down and down and come down into ourselves, into our body that's refreshed and renewed from this quiet moment. And we come back remembering that connection to Source, that we are one with the family of life. We are one with the great life that made us, the love and light. And so we know ourselves more deeply, and we're connected to an ever, ever present and eternal source of life and light and inspiration, the deep feminine. And so taking a nice, deep and easy breath, let yourself come on back into our space here now. And I like to start with that because I think it's so important for us to know ourselves and who we really are, and our eternal nature, and also our ability to create out of nothing. You know, if you think about everything you have, it's like, well, maybe you want a new car, and so you have it in your mind. It's a thought. There's nothing there, no material reality. You bring that thought, it comes into you, and then you begin to magnetize to that and to yourself what you have seen. And pretty soon, boom, 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 outside your home, which you've also created by dreaming about it, there it is. And so we have that incredible capacity. It's a part of our magic. Does that make sense to you all? Are we interacting at all? I don't know if I have interaction from people or not.
We are, and Brooke, if you want, you can place us on gallery. We have you on speaker view, so you're the main thing that we're looking at. But if you want, you can place us on gallery view, and you can get to see our nodding and our responses to you.
Aha, there we all are. How many are we today?
We are 33. And for those of you who are here, I strongly recommend placing yourself on video, because it's really an experience for all of us to get to experience all of us. I was speaking earlier about how our listening is what calls forth the story, and this is a part of it. So there we go. I'm seeing smiles and waves coming straight at you right now.
All right. Well, it's wonderful to see most all of you anyway, and to be here with you. So I hope that was something that's useful to you, because when we can ground ourselves in source. And especially I see that most of you are, at least from what I can see here, most of you are women. And when we understand that we were given that womb of creation in our own bodies, we have the womb of creation in our bodies, and that's the big magic. That's the biggest magic in human form, is that womb that brings forth life. And so when we know that and connect to that, then we wake up to a whole different feeling of ourselves, I think. And it's pretty exciting because we're in the time of the rising feminine. And as we remember that and awaken to that, then I believe that we're going to step forward in a really remarkable way, a natural, beautiful way of creating a different life for ourselves. And one of the things I want to mention while I'm thinking of it is that we have so many challenges now. We have put ourselves into a very difficult situation. And often I think where we go for answers is to our intellect, to our, what I would call a masculine part of ourselves. It's rational thinking, logic, figuring it out, using our head. Let me see, I'll figure this out, and I'll, using our own limited experience and what's around us. But what I'm being told is that where we need to go for the source of our inspiration and creativity and solutions in this time, whether it's solutions to something personal and just for ourselves, or whether it's larger problems that are going on in the world, that going to that source is where we get the real solutions. And they're solutions that are not only workable, they're solutions that are absolutely in tune with all of reality, and they're solutions that work for everything, for the wholeness. And so I think that when we go to that source for solutions and inspiration, things will happen very fast, because if they're true and supported by life, I believe they will move into action really quickly. Does that make sense to you? So I'd like to go ahead then with the story of White Buffalo Woman and give you that before we talk about ritual and all of that kind of thing. Because White Buffalo Calf Woman is one of the Great Mother's teachers, as I understand her. She's carries the message that the Great Mother wants us to have. So let me tell you about her and about when she came. So we want to let ourselves drift back about 20 generations. And in those days, the Lakota people lived further back in the Midwest. They lived back in more of the forested areas, but they came out in the summertime onto the Great Plains to hunt for buffalo. And in the wintertime, in the colder times, the quieter times, they gathered together in large tribal groups, and sometimes tribes came together and more people got together. And I always laugh and say it was a chance for women to find a husband that wasn't their cousin. And so anyway, that beautiful big gatherings and a wonderful time spending time together. But as the summer came on, they realized that to be moving and being in the world in the way they wanted, and especially to be traveling, that they needed to be in smaller groups. And so they often broke down into what I think are really human-sized groups. And that's about 24 people. Our people call it a camp, in a sense. So it was like one probably older man, a strong older man, his wife or wives, and the family around him. And very likely, if any of you have kids, you know that there were probably some other kids with you, or cousins or whoever. There was just this family group that had decided for for the summer to move together and to be together. And those groups always had with them at least 2 young warriors, 2 what we would have called dog soldiers. And those young men were, to do all the young guy stuff. They were strong and powerful and warriors and able to do so many of the masculine kinds of things. So on this one day then, a camp of people were out on those long rolling hills, tall grass prairie, probably out in North Dakota kind of country, North and South Dakota. And I always see them stopping beside a little willow-lined stream. And the women start putting up the lodges and getting things ready and getting things organized. And during this time then, the 2 young men, the 2 young warriors, went up on the hills to look around. And they were doing 2 things. They were, one, looking around to see buffalo, because that's what they were there for, was to do their summer buffalo hunt. So they were looking around for buffalo. They were also doing another thing, because out on that enormous, enormous, enormous plain, there were all sorts of tribes out there hunting for buffalo. And they weren't necessarily friendly. So the young men were up on that rise looking to see if there was anyone else around, it was a protective function for their people. So they looked around and didn't see much anything, and sweet little breeze blowing, and they were enjoying being up there. And then all of a sudden they saw way over in the distance, long ways away, they saw something moving. Just a single something, they didn't know what it was exactly. First they couldn't tell, maybe it was an animal. It was strange because out in that kind of country, not many things are alone, maybe an old buffalo bull, but most of the things are in herds or groups. And so they watched and watched, and they kept looking, and my gosh, as it grew closer, they began to think, that's a person. That's a human, not an animal. It was coming straight toward them. So they watched and watched, and this person was coming right straight toward them. And they just watched, and they were also, looking around to keep checking things out, because gosh, people don't normally be out there alone. So they were looking around to see if there was anybody else. And this person went up on a rise where the grass was a little lower. And they realized, not only is this a person, it's a woman out here on her own. And then they got concerned because they thought, is she a decoy? Is like she attracting our attention and then somebody's going to come up from behind or something? I mean, they got very nervous and they were really watching and paying attention to what was going on. And she kept coming right straight toward them. She dipped down and up and came up and up. And as she grew close enough where they could see her features and see her better, they realized that she had on beautiful, I guess what I would call ceremonial dress, because if any of you have worn a white dress in your day-to-day life, you know how that goes, and especially if you're camping. So she was unusual in that way. She had on this beautiful, beautiful ceremonial fringed kind of a dress, white, that other people rolled up and kept safe for their ceremonial moments, but didn't wear every day. So she kept coming toward them, and as they got closer and they could see her features, or she got closer and they could see her features, they realized not only is this a human and a woman, it's an incredibly beautiful woman. And something they had noticed as she came that suddenly kind of struck them really powerfully was there was an aura of light around her. There was something very unusual. She had a pack on her back, a little bundle on her back. But there was this interesting light. So here's this radiantly beautiful, remarkable person, a woman, still coming right toward them, getting very close to them. And on the hill that day, there were two kinds of men. You may have run into them yourself. And the first one said, this is a good-looking babe. And she's by herself. So I'm going to go take advantage of her. So he walks over and she opens her robe and takes him in. And the other warrior told the story later. He said, when she did that, the mist began to gather around them so that he couldn't see what was happening. This thick, thick mist. But he said it didn't take very long, just a few minutes it seemed. And the breezes that blow across those prairies picked up and began to blow away this fog, this mist that had gathered around them. And when it did, when the mist was blown away, she opened her robes and the skull and bones of this man fell out and onto the prairie, and they were blown away by the prairie winds. So you can imagine what it was like for the other guy. He's probably going, oh my God. He was just stunned and shocked and scared. But he was a different kind of man. He was what my people call a true man, because he lived a very masculine life. He was capable and strong and a warrior and a protector and a provider. And he did that in service of his people. It's the definition of a true man, not only using that masculine ability, but in a sense the feminine that says we take care of people, we nourish, we serve, we love, we're united, we're one. And so he, and I'm sure with absolute trepidation, he approached her and said, "Oh, powerful and beautiful woman, would you come and teach my people?" And she said, "Yes, go before me and make a lodge and gather your people and I will come." And so I'm sure he ran like the wind down off of that hill. People threw together, there's a way to put teepees together where you can get a lot of people in, and they made that, and then they ran and grabbed those ceremonial clothes that are theirs, and grabbed their best moccasins and got ready and set in there, and probably the head man was at the back, and all the others around, and women and children, everyone were in there. And when they were ready, she came. She came and she ducked down and came in to the lodge and stepped up into the center. And what she did was she took off of her back this bundle that she was carrying, and she laid it out before them and unrolled it. And what she had in there was a pipe. And pipes were not unknown. You know, there were smaller pipes, kind of like what we see men smoking today, just a regular daily pipe. But then they also had a more in a sense, ceremonial or group pipe that had a much longer stem and a bowl that fastened to that. So it wasn't unusual, maybe, that it wasn't like they'd never seen a pipe before. But she laid it out and she said to them, I have a teaching for you that's profoundly important. And she said, this catlinite bowl, this red stone bowl, is the bowl of the feminine. This represents the womb of the Great Mother. There's room for everything, everything in the whole universe belongs in here. And then she took the stem and said, this stem is the masculine. This is this wooden stem represents the masculine, and the hole that goes up through it, represents that each of us have a connection right straight to the Great Spirit. And she taught them many other things. And then she went ahead and she held them up and she put them together. That catlinite bowl, that feminine and the masculine, she put them together. And she said, this is the unity of all things, the masculine and the feminine, the up and down, the in and out, the black and white, the everything, all of it now we see as united. And then she placed tobacco in the pipe. So she began a ceremony. She took tobacco, and Native people had grown tobacco all along. Sometimes they planted it along the riverbanks and other places where they thought it would grow, and they would circle back around. Even the nomadic people would circle back around, and they had this wonderful tobacco, and they smoked it. And their understanding was that tobacco's medicine, or its power, was to unite and connect things, to open hearts to connect together. So often, like when men were in council, they would smoke the pipe together to open the space to have it be good for that connection. So she took tobacco and she put some in that catlinite bowl. She put a pinch in and she said, this is for the two-leggeds. And then this is for the four-leggeds. And this is for the wingeds. And this is for the green growing ones, the little tiny ones, the herbs and plants that feed us. And then for the great green, the tall green ones. And this is for the waters and those who live in the waters. And this is for the stone people. And this is for the Mother Earth herself. And then on and on and on, she named everything. And then she said, and as well, there's some for what's around us. And all the starry realms around us, they belong here as well. And then she took a little piece of sage and she said, this is for anything I've forgotten, because we always do. We forget something. She said, it's for what I might have forgotten. And she said, it's for what I don't know. Maybe Native people on that, they didn't know about giraffes. Or there are a lot of things they didn't know about. So anything that we don't know about, and anything that is unknown or unknowable, all of it, everything is right here in this bowl, this womb of the Great Mother. And then she lighted, with the grandfather fire, she lighted that pipe and drew the smoke in, not drawing it into her lungs, drawing it in and blowing it up as a prayer, saying, this is the essence, this is the prayer, this is the energy of everything in the whole universe, the holiness. Because holiness is not about some bearded guy in the sky. Holiness is about the whole thing. The Great Mother and all creation is the holiness. And so this is a holy breath. I am breathing for and praying for and honoring everything and sending that remembering up to Creator. And so she taught them that way of holiness and that way of using the pipe. And she gave them many different rites to use it in. Inipi, the sweat lodge, the purification lodge, Hanblechi, which is going up on the mountain to pray. I believe, and I'm challenged in many ways around this, I can't but believe that she invited women to use it, because that bowl is the bowl of the womb, is the bowl of blood, is the bowl of life. And I believe that they were able to use it as well, although there are disagreements in some traditions. And she gave many, many other rites to the people. And I believe she stayed with them for a certain amount of time. And I think the children grew to love her, and the people just loved her. They saw how pure and beautiful and loving and kind she was, and also how fierce, how clear she was about who we are and what we offer and how we serve our world. Anyway, they grew to love her. And then there was a day when she said she needed to go. And the way I see it in my mind's eye is that she gathered her. I think she left that pipe. As a matter of fact, the Lakota people have that pipe that she left. And she walked out of the village. I think all the people went with her. They walked a ways, and the people respectfully stopped. And I always think that the children who had grown to love her walked on out with her until finally the elders said, come on, you need to let her go now. So they let her go. And I also like to think that that beautiful young man that called her from his beautiful heart, called her to come and share with the people, that perhaps he walked out the furthest with her. And then she walked on out into the tall grass prairie. And when she was out a ways, she rolled in the grass. She sat down in the grass. And when she stood back up, she was a dark buffalo. And she went on further out, and she went down and rolled again. And when she came up, she was a red buffalo. And she went on further out. And when she rolled, she came up and was a yellow buffalo. And finally, she went out and rolled again. And when she stood up that time, she was a white buffalo calf. And she ran and went across the hills and away. But she left the people with vision, and with that pipe, and with that way of holiness and that way of wholeness. And she's a wonderful lesson for us, I think, because I think it's easy for us to identify with the good guy, isn't it? It's like, hey, I'd be the second warrior, of course I would. I mean, I'm a good person, that's who I'd be. But I think there's a deeper level of teaching than that, and that is, what do we take from life? How do we relate to life? And what's interesting is that in America and many modern countries, I think America's the worst, we use from 60 to 600 times as much of the resources of life as any other people on earth. So in a way, we're kind of that other guy, where we're taking from cultures, and taking and using and abusing and destroying and all of that. So I think that each of us human beings has in us both of those. And we're really being called in this time, and I think especially in this time that we've just come into, this virus, this incredible challenge that is waking us up in different ways. And I think that what's being said to us is, really, I don't think it's about a bad guy virus. Viruses are a part of life. They've always been here. They're always around. They move through our systems. But I think what happens is that when we are in a certain state of stress and challenge in our bodies and in our beings that things, it's like our immune system. If our immune system is weak, we get a cold or a flu. And I think that all the pollution, all of the, whether it's pesticides and chemicals, and I think light pollution, and certainly radiation. And then we add in more and more and more of our cell phones, and then 5G or whatever we add in. And it feels like it's just overwhelming that the system, the human system, is not able to deal with that. And so many people are deeply affected by it. And it seems to me that it's the Mother Earth saying, you need to wake up. You need to figure out what's going on here that stresses you and how you created that by what you've done. And you need to come back into a time of harmony and simplicity and beauty. And, one of the things that the wisest of elders that I listen to say, they say that we have this generation, which I think generation's about 20 years, that we have this generation to come into harmony as a human family with the larger family of life, or else we'll be extinct. That life won't tolerate us anymore. And so it's a really amazing time, a powerful time, a time of great decision, and a time when White Buffalo Woman speaks to us very strongly. And I just received a note just today that I found very special, especially as I was going to be speaking to you. But in a buffalo herd that I drive by in Montana when I'm home, there's just born another little white buffalo calf. And I think that's very interesting in our time, because Buffalo Woman said, when you hold strong to this pipe, when you hold this holiness and this oneness in your heart and walk through it, walk through till the end of time, and I will meet you there, she said. And so I have a sense that these white buffalo and other kinds of things are coming to us to awaken us in a really beautiful way. So there are lots of lessons that she brings. And, those kind of stories that share great teachings are, I think, a way we human beings have learned down through time. And I think it's really wonderful, Leah, that you're working with people around story and around ceremony and ritual and that kind of thing. So does anyone have thoughts or questions for me before I go into the next level of what I'm going to offer? I'm going to get a drink first.
Brooke, I have a question. I want other people to ask, but before we go on to the next, I was curious also if you could give us your insight and advice on if someone here feels called to carry this story, if there's anything that you can speak to, because I know that some stories are not designed to be carried by those whose lineage they don't live in. And so I was just curious what you would have to say about that.
Yeah, well, I tend to be a renegade and a radical in certain ways, because my experience of myself is that I'm a rainbow child. I have Native background, I have European background. I have many kinds of Indian blood, even many kinds of Native blood. So I've just always felt like a global person. And what I'm most interested in is what works for human beings. Because we all are, it's so obvious that we're one family. This whole thing that's just come up has made it so clear that we're all in this together. And so I have always offered everything I could into the world. But what I think, and I was going to talk about this, and it's a good segue into the ceremony thing. What I was going to talk about is that I think it's really important to honor the traditions of people. Like if you are in and maybe with someone who have spent a lot of time in a west-facing healing purification lodge, in which prayers and things are very specific. There's a specific ceremony. Unless you have been given permission and training to share that, that is not yours to share. That's very specific. But I believe that there are so many things that are meant to be shared, that in the old days, some of the old wise men said about our native ways, they said, you know, if we don't share these with a culture that doesn't know these things, know how to be in harmony, know how to live lightly on the earth, if we don't share these things and help bring them up to a level of harmony, all our children will be in trouble. So I think it's really important to share things. And I mean, I've gotten in trouble, to tell you the truth. I'm very controversial because I have taught, you know, the kind of things that I'm teaching you. And some people say, well, that doesn't belong to anybody else. And you know, you shouldn't be teaching white people and you know, blah, 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 and you're giving away secrets. But you know, what's really true is that at any university course on Native American, they're talking about all, you know, so many of the basic things. So it's not like private information. So many of these things are open to the larger public now. And what I think is very interesting is that the white buffalo calf that was born first, do you remember where she was born, where Miracle was born? That was a good while ago. Where was she born?
Johnson.
She was born on a little farm, a little family farm in Wisconsin, to a white family that had, interestingly enough, lots of different kind of animals. I thought that was very fascinating. She wasn't born on a Lakota reservation. And in a way, it's good that she wasn't, because if she had been, they would have claimed her and said, she's ours. But I think, and here's one in Lolo, Montana, near Missoula. And there are others that have been born here and there. And for me, that's an expression of this. When we're talking holiness, we're not talking one people or one culture here. We're being given the message that we need to be one family, and we need to find whatever it is that helps us do that. So I think it's wonderful to be respectful and honoring and say, I know this comes from a culture that is different than mine, and I hope that I share it in a good way, because my intention is a heartful one, and I wish to uplift people with it. So does that make sense, that there's a way of sharing information, but it's not a very, you know, it's not a specific ceremony from a specific somebody. And I know it's hard to tell the difference in some ways when you're outside the culture, but I think it's about heart and about caring. And I really have disagreement with those who say, well, this is ours and you shouldn't do this. And I totally get it. I mean, I totally get it, that everything was taken, you know, even, I mean, most people don't even remember. And I've been talking about this. I even put something very intense out on Facebook about, you know, people get upset at minorities being angry and upset. And I said, what would it be like if a few generations ago, everyone came in, somebody came into your village and killed your women and children? And then later on, when you were subjugated, they came into your villages and took every child in your village. You had no children left. And if one was born and stopped nursing, boom, that child was gone like that. It was taken from you. So, you know, there was a lot lost, and there's a lot of anger and upset around that, and such challenge. So I really deeply understand that sort of angry, you know, you've taken everything else, now you're trying to take our spiritual work. But to me, spirit is wholeness. It's like the truth is whole and for all of us. So it isn't something, even if it is ours, I think we need to start sharing now. And more and more elders are out there. I know one of the things that's happening is more and more elders are allowing ceremonies to be filmed because they say it's for all of us. And if we don't share, if we don't use what we have to uplift everyone, we're all in trouble. It's sad that the media can put out things that are negative and all of that, but I'm just not interested in being stopped by that because, we really are in a crisis situation here that is so important to address. And so anything we can do and anything we can offer. And I do think it's important, and I'd like to go on into the thoughts about ceremony now, because I do think it's important for us to understand ceremony, so it's not like, well, I have to go take one of theirs because I don't know anything about it. But to understand ceremony and ritual in a way that you can create them yourself. They're just natural to us as human family. And I had something come up one time, and I've never seen it again, but I loved what it gave me. I was looking up, because I'm very interested in words and what they mean, and the etymology, the derivation of them. So I was looking up the word ceremony. And in this definition, in this place that I looked, this reference, they said it came from a background of cere, C-E-R-E or something, but that it referred to wax. Wax. And I thought to myself, what is that about? How would that relate to ceremony? But here's what I thought. I realized that ceremony is a way, almost like we're forming a sculpture or a bowl. We're forming something in a certain way that is filled with spirit or filled with something of a specific kind. It's like it can be shaped like this or like this or like, well, it's like a sculpture. You make that in wax and then you cast it and something amazing comes out. So when I think of ceremony in that way, I think of it as forming something. We're calling something into that form. Like baking a cake, you can make an angel food cake or a little flat cake or you can make all sorts of different things. But that's what ceremony is about, is forming something in order to accomplish something else. So I think of ceremony as a group of rituals, you might say, that lead to a certain outcome. So for me anyway, the difference between ceremony and ritual is that I think of ritual more as, I would say, like a single act. Like you can ritually wash yourself with water. That's a ritual act. It's a metaphorical act, but it's a single act. So I cleanse myself with water. That's a ritual. And we have rituals of many kinds in our life. Some of them like a habitual thing that we do is almost like a ritual. We ritually get up in the morning and do a certain kind of a thing. But does that make sense as a ritual, that a ritual is that? But then I think of a ceremony as a combination of many elements, including rituals, where we form it for a certain reason. And it's interesting. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a peyote ceremony, but the way those happen and the way many kind of ceremonies happen is you start at the beginning and you do certain things that open the way for the next thing, that open the way for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And what's interesting is if somebody goofs up, like, which people often do, and get something out of order, they put cedar on the fire, because cedar is about forgiveness, and forgiveness is about clearing it away, just clear that away like it never happened. And then you can continue on rather than going back and starting at the very beginning again. So it's almost like let's say a marriage ceremony. Would you start off with the ring? That'd be weird. That'd be completely out of place. You need to start with, everybody's anticipating. It's like everyone's excited. Oh my gosh, what's she going to look like? What's the bride going to look like? And there's the guy standing up there. It's like, oh my gosh, that's the first thing. It's like, look how handsome he looks. And he's so excited and nervous. And energy starts to build. And then, there she comes. And the beauty of that, walking and coming, being brought by her father or her giver up and up. I mean, it all builds energy. It's all so amazing. And as a matter of fact, in the old days, and I performed ceremonies like that in the old days in California. And one of the things that people would say to me is, well, we're living together already. We'll just walk in together. I mean, what's the deal? And I said, no, you won't. That's no fun. I mean, that's no energy. There's no boom. When he takes her hand and that veil comes off, something amazing happens. And then things proceed from there. So there's an order and an energy that's built by things. So a ceremony is that kind of thing. And the thing you want to do, I think, is to figure out your intention. I've got a whole lot of notes here. I can teach about ceremony for a whole day, so I'm going to try to skim through and get some things that we can do in a short time. But the main thing is to think about your intent. I mean, what do you want to create? Do you want to pray for water and maybe have a group of people come together and do a ceremony to pray for clear water and plenty water for everyone? I mean, is that what you want? Then how would you do that? What would that look like? What would you need to do? So the idea of ceremony is to magnify a focus, to really gather the energy and magnify and intensify something so that when you let it go, there's energy. It's not like, oh, we'll just pray for water. Okay, whatever. No, you come together, you dance. Perhaps you sing songs. You sing water songs. Whatever you do, you build energy, you gather energy. And I want to tell you something that I learned. I love where I learn things because I've been dancing circles all my life. And I mean, this is probably 15 years ago, maybe longer than that. I was doing some work at a gathering. It was a gathering of new scientists. And they were doing some amazing things, discoveries and inventions and all of these things that they were bringing forward. So I had done my work and danced people in a circle. And I sat down by this one young fella who was a Vedic or Indian trained scientist, East Indian. And he said, do you know what you're doing? And I said, well, maybe not. He said, do you know what you're doing when you dance that circle? And I said, well, thought so. I'm creating energy, or, I'm putting people together and representing the wholeness and blah, blah, blah. I told him some things. And he said, yeah. But he said, I mean, the movement, you're dancing, you're moving people. And I said, okay, tell me what. And he said, here's the way we talk about it in the East Indian way. He said, what you're creating when you do that is what we call a devata. I said, okay, a devata. And he said, the way energy manifests into the world is in a vortex. It's a vortex spin. Things spin into physical reality and then they spin out. He said, so what's going on is you are making that vortex. It's like if you stick a stick down in a fluid and twirl it, a vortex is created. So he said, you're making a vortex and you're calling energy in. And he said, the energy that you're calling in is what we call a devata. And I said, well, what's that? And the way he explained it reminded me of a genie. Remember in all the Arabian Nights and all that, there's a genie that comes. What does the genie do? Does a genie come walking in? No. The genie comes, remember? He comes spinning in. And then what does the genie do? Somebody tell me. What does a genie do when he comes?
Grants wishes.
That's exactly it. He says, what may I do for you? What wish would you like granted? So a devata is like that. You are creating in that dance an energy at the center. And of course, if you have a powerful altar there, then you're with an intention, like about water, then you're creating a lot of good energy around that, a lot of energy around water and around the prayer that you've set in that altar. But he said, you've created an incredible amount of energy. And if you just walk off from that circle, you go, boom, the energy just disperses. He said, it's so important. And he said, I watched you say a prayer and finish up and send that energy in a certain way. And he said, that's what you need to do because you have built energy. And that genie, that energy is saying, what would you like? What do you want me to do with it? Here I am. And you need to say, okay, I'm sending you into all the waters of the world to clear and cleanse, to make plentiful, to awaken the hearts of humanity, to understand the richness and the beauty and the preciousness of water, and blah, 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 You send that out into the world. Does that make sense? So think about that when you're creating a ceremony. It could be the littlest ceremony, but one of the fun things is to get a little spin going, to get a little movement. But that circle is often what you create. And that circle is about, creating a space, a safe space, a space of intention. And the altar, it's great to have an altar at the center if you're creating a ceremony, or an altar up front. And what does altar mean? Altar comes from the same word as alta. Alta, altitude, the Latin altitude. So an altar is what you hold high. It's what you look up to. So what are you going to be holding high? What are you going to be looking up to? In this instance, it's water. And what's fascinating then is to, the use of color and symbolic kind of things. If you have green and blue, and if you have a beautiful big bowl of water and maybe flowers floating in it, if the songs you sing and all of that are about water, you just continue to support the feeling of water and its power and its magic. So the creation of the space in which you're going to do ceremony is important. And it could be the simplest thing. You might set a crystal and do the simplest little ritual, or a couple rituals that are a ceremony of prayer of some kind. But I think it's important to pay attention to the space that you create and the metaphor you create. And remember that it's like story, Leah. That's why I think it's very interesting that you're working with story, because our minds, our brain, down through all of time, people have understood that our brains love stories. They learn from story, from metaphor. And so you're creating a story, you're creating a metaphor, you're creating a symbol. And so, to have an order, it's like and I'm talking about a little bigger ceremonies, if you will. But we can, think about them as smaller ones as well. But it's like you get there and somebody says, we're going to enter in silence. That suddenly sets a different tone. Come into a circle. You dance a circle. Perhaps there's drumming and a song. And then things continue to move through a series of experiences that you want people to have. And then you send that energy up and allow yourself to move out of that experience. But you complete it, you take it to completion, you move it through that metaphor in every way that you can. And, songs are really very special, because I think they go deeper into the psyche than sometimes even words. So songs are incredibly powerful. I mean, even if you have a song that you play in a little ritual you're doing, you can play a song from someone else. I have wonderful songs that you can use for ceremony and all of that. You can do that or sing one. It's wonderful to do it yourself, to have a drum and to sing and put that vibration in. And the words you use are really important. To use those words that uplift and support what you're wanting to do. So to really, pay attention to how you're thinking and what you're doing. Another fun thing when you're thinking of doing larger ceremonies or having a few people together is the clothing you wear. The old shamans knew how to use that kind of thing very powerfully. And people say, well, they're just doing sleight of hand tricks, But basically what they were doing is they were dressing the part. Like I was running around today in a pair of cutoffs and a kind of a grubby gardening shirt. And I could have come and talked to you in that. But really, isn't it better to have a sense of something different, for me to express in my dress what I'm wanting to say about my culture and about beauty and about, here's this wonderful feather. I don't know if you can see what that is, but this beautiful feather and all of these things, it sets a tone that's very different. And I think for a while, a lot of people said, well, you shouldn't have to dress up to go to church, or you shouldn't have to dress up to, what's a deal about doing stuff. And I know one of the things I ask is that when women come together to do women's work, that you either wear a skirt or wrap a shawl around your jeans or whatever, because it's about the feminine. It's about, and my elders said, you don't teach unless you're in a skirt. If you're representing the feminine, you need to be feminine. Because I'm a definite tomboy, I can tell you that. So that representation, and sometimes I'll say to people, okay, if we're going to do an honoring of the 4 directions, come wearing a color of one of the directions. I think of gold in the morning sun in the east, and the red in the south, and black in the evening, and then white in the north, like wintertime and the deep, and then springtime in the south, in the east, and summer and fall and winter, around it goes. But I ask people, wear a shirt or bring a belt or bring a shawl or something, and then you'll be part of the West gang or the East gang or whoever. But, just that kind of thing begins to have people be or even have you be involved in and a part of the sense of ceremony that is happening. You know, there was an interesting thing. I have a wonderful friend. Her name is Lynn Crowspreads His Wings. And she had been connected with a tribe there in Montana through her dad, who was not Indian, but he just really connected and loved the people in the pretty early days. And she had been around them. And then she went back home. She'd been a hippie out in San Francisco. Several of us did that. And so she was used to just, you know, wearing kind of grubby clothes, you know. Didn't have to be dirty, but they weren't pretty. And there was that whole thing about, well, you don't, you know, dress up and have fancy stuff, and you just live simply and all of that. So she had a lot of clothes that were just pretty raggedy, actually. And the women there took her in and began to teach her. And she had this kind of attitude, you know, about dressing up or doing something beautiful. And her elders made her give them all of her clothing, and they had her make a red velvet dress. And in camp in the backcountry, they made her wear that red dress, and she was freaking out. And they said, "You need to be an expression of beauty. Creator gave you beauty all around you, and you need to be an expression of beauty back as a gift to your world." And I thought that was really interesting. She ended up hating that dress by the time she got out of it. But she really got the lesson that being grubby and stuff is, you know, it's great to garden and do whatever you do. And it's not all about dressing up and looking in a certain way. But there's another thing about beauty and an expression of beauty and being your most radiant, loving, heartful, gorgeous self, because we're all beautiful. Our hearts and our souls are so beautiful. So yeah, I think that's a wonderful thought as well. So then there's another thing that I think is important. And because if we're going to be doing ceremony and this metaphorical kind of work, we need to step up above the physical level, I would say. Because a lot of the magic takes place in the higher realms of life, I think. And so, you know, to meditate, to quiet, to drop out of ordinary reality, to let go of the daily stuff. Often when I begin a ritual or begin something, I will say, Creator, help us. I don't think I did it this time. Help us leave behind. You know, it took us some to get here. It took us some to get started. You know, there's all this, got to get there, got to get things hooked up and got to get Zoom. And, you know, it's like all of those things. We can just drop. I appreciated Leah saying, just take a moment here. Let's just drop into another kind of place. Let's see if we can clear our mind. It's part of the West function in the medicine wheel. The West is about letting go. My elders used to say that. I mean, I always think of things starting, and I think it's kind of classic for a lot of us to think, well, where do things start? Well, they start in the East, of course, sunrise. That's the beginning. And they said, no, that's not where things start. Okay, where do they start? They said they start in the West, in the evening, when you let go. The West is about clearing, the leaves falling, letting go, not carrying the old, clearing the decks, so that then there's space to learn something new, to be new. It's like going into that West is the little feminine, when you quiet down from the awakening of the day and the activity of the South, of busyness and doing and handling it, the masculine side of things. You start into the West, and it's that starting to quiet, starting to receive, starting to let go, starting to go into that deeper cave. That's the little feminine. And then you go into the North, which is that deeper feminine place. It's like where it's a place of not doing, a place of opening. It's like that's what I recommend for all of you, is to, take some time, even a short time, to really drop into that space of the deep feminine, of not doing anything, but opening to something greater. So that kind of, really adding that element when you're doing some kind of ceremony, I think is really important. And to hold that, to hold that energy. And one of the things I want to share here too, because I think it's important for men and women, but a lot of people have been around ceremony, Native American or indigenous ceremony, and when they arrived for Sweat Lodge or whatever the ceremony might be, they were asked, is anyone on their moon time? Is there anyone bleeding, menstruating? And if they said yes, they said, you can't be in here. Well, that was shocking and disappointing. And it felt like, well, that's mean. And unfortunately, sometimes it was done very poorly. And I mean, there are some people in some cultures, and I find around the Lakota tradition, some of the men are, oh, you can't be around, women on their moon time. They can't touch food or you'll die, or, it's like, oh my God. It's like, come on, gang. We're born out of that. It's like I get really aggravated and mouthy about it. But anyway, there's some kind of negative. But in the old days, there was a medicine couple. And if that happened and women were on their moon, the woman then would take the women and do women's ritual, which is absolutely as powerful. But why were women not allowed into ceremony? Well, here's what I've been taught, and it makes sense to me. The feminine is about flow, it's almost like that river flowing and moving. It blows through structure. It moves through things. It dissolves things. And moon time, your menstrual time, you're in that deep feminine flowing, destructuring time. It's about something not structured. It's not about structure. And as a matter of fact, it flows through structure. And so what's seen by powerful seers is that when that powerful energy of women in that flowing, destructuring space comes into a ceremony, it starts breaking down the structure of a ceremony. And the structure of a ceremony is what we've been talking about. You start here and go there and around and dum, 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 dum. And it's not anything a woman does. It's how her energy affects the whole of things. So if you're in a ceremony where things need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is often the way ceremonies do, then it's not the best time for you to be in that space. And in a lot of traditions, you would be in your moon lodge anyway, because women going into their moon lodge for 4 days a month, 4 days off, gals, 4 days going into their moon lodges and going into meditation with the Great Mother, quieting themselves, nurturing. Women are on 24/7. When do we get any time off? We get time off 4 days on our moon time. So resting and nurturing and going deep and calling vision and bringing forth newness and richness back into their culture. So you'd have been doing that anyway. And in a lot of cultures, I often say to people, they say, well, that's not fair. I really wanted to do sweat lodge. But if you were a person in a native culture, there's sweat lodges going on every 5 minutes. It's not like you're missing anything. You're doing what you're doing during the time of your moon. And then you catch, after that, you catch the next one, catch the next round. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, once again, I'm always being mouthy, and I started saying I didn't know this stuff from the beginning. I learned it later in my life, but as soon as I found out, I started talking to these guys. And I said, you know what? If you're going to tell a woman she can't come in, you need to have some teachings for her or a place for her to go so that she doesn't feel like she's done something wrong. So you guys need to step up, because a lot of times it was guys out there teaching. You need to step up and get clear about this and do something honoring with women. And sometimes that wasn't met with such wonderful energy, but I felt it was really important. It's like, if you said to the guys, hey, go sit down because you can't come in. That makes us all feel kind of weird, like if we don't understand. So anyway, that's the thing about women and ceremony. And of course, when we're living a true woman's life, we're following the moon and we're paying attention to and honoring our menstrual time. And I believe that as we move into this new time, as the feminine awakens, we're going to have 4 days a month off. We're going to start with 1 day, and then we're going to have 2 and 3 and 4. And I think they've done studies in Iceland where they give women a day or 2 off, and they've proven that women are more productive, more healthy, more happy, more joyful, more creative. Literally, everything's better when they have that time off. So, that's where we're headed, and that's a lot of what I'm wanting to do and teach now, is about that kind of natural empowerment for women, and about the fact that when we go into the deep, go into the womb of the Great Mother in that deep, feminine, nurturing moon time, dark of the moon time, that we are serving ourselves and our health and our well-being. The whole health bill that's enormous in the whole United States and around the world would drop significantly were we given the chance to nurture ourselves and take care of ourselves. And then the secondary benefit, that's in a way the most powerful for the world, is that we come out of it with gifts from the Great Mother, inspiration, creation, seeing. Incredible seers and visionaries were born and developed in that space. So they might have come out, and 2 or 3 of them said, you know what we saw while we were there meditating? We saw that it's going to be one of the hardest winters we have ever faced. Mm-hmm. And they would go and tell the chief, who's the executor, the one to handle it, go tell the chief, and the chief would say, oh man, thank you for that. I'll start right now, and we'll prepare, and we'll get ready for this winter. And they were honored for that. And women in their moon time were known to be the most powerful visionaries. So all of that is a real powerful part of what, we're going to be able to be about. Well, you know what? In the deepest teachings, the moon is the guide. So at the dark of the moon, if women are natural women and their eyes are in the moonlight, they bleed at the dark of the moon. The moon guides that process. And as you can imagine, I don't know how long ago, 50, 60, 100 years ago, there wasn't all this light pollution. You could step outside your home, and what was there? The moon, the stars. And so you were guided by that. And so the thing is always to follow the moon And you can have, like if you do have your menstrual time, you can intend, and there are other things I do teachings about that really invite your menses to come back to the dark of the moon, so that at the dark of the moon you're bleeding and going deep and quieting, and like they say, you cover your face when the grandmother moon covers hers. And in the full moon, guess what? That's the time to dance under the moon with the guys. And in the way of the natural woman, you're ovulating then. So it's very easy to continue the human race if you play around too much out there in the moonlight. But that's the cycle of ovulation and the full moon celebration, hanging out, connecting, and then around to the dark of the moon. So that's always your cycle. And you can follow that no matter what, no matter whether you have a womb or whether you have a hysterectomy or whether you don't, or whether you're young or whether you're old. And one of the things about the grandmother lodge or the wisdom lodge is that when women step into that, when the moon pause lodge, when they leave their bleeding behind, then the dedication of that grandmother, and I don't like to say grandmother because I always say I'm a naughty aunt. I'm really not anybody's grandmother. But of the wisdom woman, of the elder woman, the moon pause woman, her dedication is, now I will no longer pay attention just to in a sense, the children around my skirts, the people that are close to me in that way. I will step into, in a sense, holiness. I will step into my dedication being to the children of all life in the whole circle. And those women who had 4 days off and literally vision quested for 4 days every moon of their life, those were incredibly powerful, deep, amazing spiritual women. And when they turned their attention to the larger world, they were the ones that held the wholeness and the harmony and the connection and the unity and love and all of that. So the elder women were like incredibly special and honored in that way. And one of the things I like to remind people about that I just learned about not too long ago is, you've heard that the American Constitution was built on the Iroquois pattern, right? The founding fathers had learned from these powerful Iroquois people how they did their governance. And they had two governing bodies, you might say, different kinds, but they had two. And then they had an executive group, people who put it into action. So the early founding fathers put that into place, but they missed one significant piece. And do you know what that was?
Grandmothers.
The Senate, if we were to look at it in the way that we think of things today, the Senate was the grandmothers. You are absolutely right. Just think if we had a Senate, instead of the good old boys there that do the kind of horrible things they do, and I am not happy with a lot of what goes on in those places. Instead of that, we would have grandmothers whose intention and whose dedication is to life and the aliveness of the children of all things, and understanding holiness, and that when we destroy what's underneath us, what we're standing on, when we destroy that, we destroy ourselves. So that feminine power is just incredible, and the power of the grandmothers. So I think that will come forward again as well.
Thank you.
So I want to touch on a couple other things, and then I think our time is about up, but go ahead, ask.
Oh, I just remembered it was Dina, who I outed her before we began, who led me to you. And I remembered why she brought me to you, which is because I was speaking about the class Sanctuary and about how we were putting ritual into action. And she's like, well, clearly you know about Brooke Medicine Eagle. And I'm like, I don't know. And so then I started reading your book and soaking it up. And so I was wondering if before we end, if you could speak to this, but I know that's a term that you've really brought forward. And yeah, I know that we're nearing the door. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, so let me just finish with one other thing here and then remind me about that. But one thing I did want to mention is that there's a word that I think it's important to hold as you do ceremony of any kind, small or large, but the word is dedication. It's like, what are you dedicating this energy to? What are you dancing around for? It's like kind of like intention, but a sense of dedicating. It's like I'm putting this energy out I'm offering it. I'm offering it to life. I'm offering it to abused women. I'm offering it to water. I'm offering it to the children. And dedicating things, and even dedicating your tools. It's like I do drum dedications. And I say to people, you're just beating on it. Well, that's one thing. And you're singing songs and stuff. But if you dedicate it, like I have a great big mother drum, and I've dedicated her to the heartbeat of the Mother Earth and the wellness of the Mother Earth. Each time that anything hits that drum, that energy is being vibrated into the world as well as whatever else is going on. So dedicating our tools, cleansing them, whether it's a rattle or a feather or a crystal or a wand or anything we might be using to cleanse them, clear them, and dedicate them in the way that you want. This is dedicated to light. This is dedicated to love. This is dedicated to wholeness. This is dedicated to whatever it is. But to have that dedication, and then to as I said, to really finish, to offer that intention, offer that final prayer, make that remembrance of what this is all dedicated to send that Devata off to work, and then celebrate. So I think about spiritual action. And for me, it's like for all of us to step into not just, I guess I would call it a kind of masculine push and shove. We're going to fix this and push that and make that happen. And we do things. It's important that we step out there and step into action. Where we spend our money, what we do, how we are is important. But I think there's such power in taking action that's at a different level. And that's that spirit, the action of spirit, the action at a spiritual level. And that's where ceremony comes in. And prayer and intention and all of that really makes such a difference. We're setting something rich into the world when we approach it from spiritual manner. And when we, especially I think when we connect to source, that'd be one of the things that would be important to do as you start a ceremony is, are you just doing it yourself, or are you going to call in some energy? It's one of the first steps. You get together, get the circle, and then are you calling in any help? Are you calling in Buddha, Christ? Are you calling in the Great Mother? Are you calling in what? Are you calling in to help you move things? And so you're uplifting the level of what you're doing above an ordinary level. And I think that that's enormously powerful. And it's a place that we can all take action. Dedicated, focused, loving action we can do in ceremony, even if we can't, get out there and do something physical or specific. We can very much intend and put our energy and our focus and our attention. And if everything's right that we've been learning in the last 20 years or so, you know, our intention, our focus, what we think, what we believe, does collectively make it the way it is. And so when we step in at that level, it's really good for us to change our state and to realize that every word we say is important, that we're creating something, that we're in spiritual action. And especially when we focus the energy, there's a lot of power in that. I want to tell you one quick story. I was doing a workshop in California, and I think we had about 30 women together, 30 or 40 women. And I had spent the whole time, we were talking about, in a sense, spiritual action, and we were going to finish with a ritual. And I talked and talked and talked about how when we step into that, place, and everyone else is there, and we lift that energy and we focus our attention, we've got some serious energy there. Things can happen, and that's why it's powerful to do ceremony together. I often like to end my gatherings with everyone stepping up and putting their intention in. There's a lot of energy there. We can support and uphold and move ourselves that way. So I said, every word you say, you know, it needs to be positive. It needs to be stated. You need to step in the energy. And this is another piece. You need to step in the energy you want to bring. It's like, well, God, I sure wish things were better. I mean, that's not working. You need to go, yes, I can see the beauty of what we can create. I can just see it. I'm so excited. This creator, this beauty, this richness, this happiness, this goodness, this love, this caring, this connection, this is what I want. So anyway, I talked all about that. And everyone was doing great. You know, everyone stepped up and they said their thing. And one gal, I couldn't do anything about it, but it just shocked me. It just kind of blew me back. She stepped up and said, Creator, I want to make a difference in children being abused and children being beat up and children being sexually abused. She went on and on and on with all of this negative, I mean, just really powerful words that were negative. And it's like the whole place just kind of went, I was going, cancel, let's jump that a level. But instead of saying, I see the children safe and happy and cared for and loved and honored and nurtured. And I see people uplifting their hearts so they understand that and how beautiful and how good it is. And so that everyone is loved and cared for. And when everyone is loved and nourished and has what they need, then there's no need to do anything negative. We can love and uphold and blah, blah, you know, on and on. So we are powerful and we're building power. We're powerful in every moment we speak. We're always taking spiritual action at that level. And we're certainly powerful when we gather together. So I would hope, thinking of sanctuary, you know, that you have a space in your home that has an altar. You know, some could be a little space or a big one, but some place where you really can hold high what's important to you and put all those special things that are really important. And one of the things I was taught too is I like to take a filmy or a lacy kind of a cover, that it's important to cover that space so that it doesn't just become everyday and ordinary. You walk by, oh, there's the altar, you know, it's like whatever. Your mind gets used to it and isn't as good about holding it high, if you will. But if when you're really going to turn attention to your altar, you go over and you take off the cover, and there it is, this beautiful space you've created. It's special, it's different. Even just that little something over it makes it very special. So I hope that you have that kind of thing in your life, and that you can allow yourself to bring those higher energies to it. And I really invite you to call on the Great Mother, that womb of love that is filled with light. And that's a sanctuary to me in itself. That is our sanctuary. That is our place of rest. That is our place of nourishment. And we can bring that loving energy into ourselves and into our lives and into our homes and into our world. So I'm really appreciative of this time we've had. And I wish you very, very well. Leah, thank you so much for what you're doing. It's just great to have all of us come together like this. It gives me an opportunity to do some sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much for all of your generosity of spirit today, and for bringing us, I'm just kind of speechless, honestly. I'm just really taking it all in, and I'm just so, so grateful for all of your commitment to teaching and bringing this forward to people of all different colors and kinds, and wherever we are in our place of learning, and making it so accessible to us. So thank you, thank you. And I want to share a teaching that I received from one of my teachers, Stephen Jenkinson, where he says, "You feed those who feed you." It's something that we haven't been gifted a lot as a way of learning in this society, how to feed those who feed us. And Brooke has fed us so beautifully and generously. And I am, as you're all going to receive the recording and a transcript of this, and I'm also going to include a link to her Patreon. She didn't ask me to do this. I just want you to know that. This is really coming through my own teaching of how do we treat our elders? How do we come back into that generous giving and receiving way? And so I'm going to include her Patreon and a PayPal link. So if you feel called to support her and support her work, then you will have one of many ways to possibly do that. And I know that she does do teaching around the country. And I know that especially for our wisdom keepers, especially our ceremony holders, it's become a very different kind of world all of a sudden when we can't gather. And so especially these people that we treasure, how do we support them in the moments when the world is asking us to reorganize and they don't have their normal form of livelihood? What do we want to have available to us on the other side? So I know that I've been keeping to look at specifically for those people who, especially in this particular channel, that I really want to support. And so I'm so grateful, Brooke, that you're with us. And maybe we'll also continue to find a way to keep your teachings happening online. So let's keep that conversation going.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that. That's very lovely, because one of the things I'm doing right now is I am creating a teaching that is all about women's empowerment and leadership, and about love and the power of that, and our brain and our hormones and our bodies. And so anyway, I would love, I don't know if we can do that, but I would love to have a mailing list of the people that are interested, and let you know when I'm doing that deeper teaching and working with women's leadership, because I'm pretty excited about that. All right, well, thank you. I'd love to sing you a women's healing song as we leave.
Okay. And then I think after the song, I'll take everyone off on mute, and we can all say goodbye together. Does that feel right? Or do you want to end in silence? What's the best way for you?
Great.
Okay, great.
So this comes from Native women, older, a long time ago. And it's a women's healing song. I think it's not just for women, but it's about the kind of energy that women use to heal. And so I want to send this from them, through me, to you, and through you to all our relations. Na ve hai, na behai, na behai, na behai. Hele kahe lang ku, hele kahe lang ku, na be no one. And I just happened to think of it, but I just put together a collection of my songs called, because I'm in France, La Femme Moon. And all of these beautiful songs around women and the feminine are available on that. So check that out if you get a chance on my website, which is just medicineeagle.com. So it would be fun to share songs with you.